Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Wrestling Skull podcast, episode 71. I'm your host, John Scott, joined as always by my co-host, Matt Essex. Matt, how you doing this week? What is another cold week for us, but I think we're getting used to it here in the UK because winter is definitely upon us, or approaching, fast approaching, should I say. How's your week been, Matt, in the last 7 days?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I can't complain. Not really been up to much, so not really got a lot to say for that.
Fair enough. Matt might have been on the download with what he's been up to, but certainly, Matt, as far as pro wrestling goes, we've had a lot of news in the last 7 days. Loads of different topics coming out. It seems like I think this month especially has been very professional wrestling heavy, and in terms of loads of different things occurring. Um, a lot of it obviously from WWE, but stuff on and off screen as well. So lots of different topics to go through on this episode of the podcast. Basically, we had a few listeners in the past couple of weeks. They've been saying, look, do you guys still watch NXT? We don't hear you talk about it as much. The truth of the matter is because of everything else that's going on, sometimes we just cannot fit it in. It's not that I don't watch it, and certainly I know Matt watches it for a fact each and every week. But it's just literally trying to cram it in on an episode can be quite difficult sometimes when we have so much other stuff to get through as well. So I thought we'd spend a big part of this podcast talking about Matt NXT, but not only NXT, but WWE's development in stars. Obviously with a performance center, seeing how that's coming along. I think it's pretty evident, Matt, that since the fall of WCW and other ECW that was around as well. Okay, we've got the indies that are lurking around, but Matt, for a long time WWE did not touch many of the indie wrestlers, and quite honestly, had it not been for guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan's success, I'm not sure if it would have opened the door to where we're at now in terms of where WWE scout their talent from. I know for a fact, Matt, that Triple H is quite heavily involved with the performance side of things, and I think the first thing he wanted to do when he got his new job role was make this performance center and start to scout talent on the indie scene. It's almost like it's okay now to go and get talent that maybe have more of a rep in the indie circuit than they do in the WWE when they first bring them in. In terms of the Performance Center, Matt, I mean, we've seen little bits of it on WWE Network and some TV, what they let us see. How's it going as far as the progress of that and sort of building to new talent on the main roster? And are we seeing the best of it now, or do you still think that that's something for the future still?
I think it's doing a great job. I think it has been doing a great job since day one, and it continues to improve upon itself each and every kind of week.
Sure.
I think another great function that it's used for is it is great for as a holding pool. If
Mm-hmm.
WWE sees some outstanding talent and they wish to acquire it, they can without any pressure because they can just use them on NXT. Build them up, like say, work on their skills, work on their mic skills and their wrestling skills and whatever else they think they need to hone for WWE television.
Sure.
And still have them under contract and not have to worry about losing contact with them or someone else snapping them up. And I think that's a great thing about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always good to have that kind of new talent because you never know with the sort of abundance of injuries last year, having that kind of talent to draw upon is a great plus for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know where we're at. I mean, WWE are the only ones that could tell you where we're at with with things as far as how they perceive it. But I definitely see this as a more of a Triple H's kind of sort of tasking out this type of stuff than I do Vince McMahon. I'm not sure this is something that he would have looked at. But Matt, I mean, in a lot of ways, I guess this performance center it does it does leave WWE in quite good stead for the future because of the way they are, conducting business. Like they're not exactly short of signing new stars and getting them in there. Now, whether they actually develop enough to get to the main roster ultimately, and that means going through NXT as well, is another thing. And also, I think that what's absolutely key for this, and what we've seen in the past happen a lot, is that it's not just getting to the main roster, but it's also sustaining credibility on the roster to sort of keep in there. And you know, as well as there are guys that have gone on like Seth Rollins and now Kevin Owens, I guess you can say, and even Finn Balor, who have gone on to amazing things, progressively well. There's also just as many, if not more, wrestlers that have gone the complete opposite way, and not just the complete opposite way as staying in the sort of same position that they were when they started, but actually completely off the chart. You don't even hear from these guys. So we've seen that as well. Do you think, Matt, that because there's a lot of debate, Matt, about the likes of Samoa Joe currently and also Shinsuke Nakamura, do you think that WWE is wasting opportunity on these more established wrestlers as such in the independent market by keeping them on this NXT product? Because it makes it look like the main roster doesn't mean as much as it perhaps should. I mean, when it's looking quite sort of bleak in areas and quite short of heavy talent going in sometimes now the brand splits happen. Do you think there's too much focus on NXT that it's lost where it's meant to be going, or do you think it's just the fact that NXT has become so popular?
Yeah, I do think it's a mixture of both, really, isn't it? The popularity of NXT has forced it into a position where it had to expand, had to grow, because if they have this show that they can use to sell tickets and sell out arenas and that, why wouldn't you? I mean,
Mm.
and the wrestling on it has always been top quality. It's great. It's great entertainment. So I can see how it has expanded. Then I can also see, where the focus can shift a little bit too much to that, because it is the developmental system. It shouldn't really be looked at like the way that we do, even though we do have great respect for it. It's just like when you have stars like you mentioned Nakamura coming in, he doesn't really belong there. I don't know where this paranoia sneaks into their minds when they're sort of thinking, oh, maybe the American fans wouldn't know who this star is because he's from the East. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't know that much about him. Maybe we need to introduce him slowly. I don't think that's necessarily true at all. I think he fitted in straight away on the main roster perfectly, much like Styles. And thank God they did that with AJ Styles, because I don't think NXT would have suited him at all.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a sort of conflict of interest sometimes when you look at NXT and their main shows and where things need to be placed, because it's interesting, Matt, that your Luke Gallows and Anderson were just planted straight on the roster, um, without any sort of any time on NXT whatsoever. Yet we have very established people like Bobby Roode and Shinsuke Nakamura, especially, and Samoa Joe, that are, for the better word, I mean, they're there for name power. But I'm also thinking, like, is this wasting time on their career in WWE as well? Because it's not like Samoa Joe is not a spring chicken anymore. Like, you want to see this guy there now as opposed to later. So I guess there's two different ways of looking at it, Matt. I mean, I guess there's WWE signing the indie wrestlers that they probably should have signed back in, I don't know, 2006, for instance. They should have probably looked at Samoa Joe then, rather than when they got him. The same with AJ Styles. But I guess there was this thing, Matt, back then in 2006, that sort of time zone where it wasn't it wasn't the done thing for WWE to go out and sign these stars that had become established elsewhere as such. But had they have done that, Matt, that we may have been a lot further ahead in their career, obviously. But be that as it may, that you're looking at two different things here. We're looking at wrestlers who have been established that have made a name, such as AJ Styles, such as Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode, for instance. But we've also got talent down there, Matt. From the likes of Mexico and also wrestlers that we've never heard of that are in that system. As far as those ones are concerned, Matt, the ones we don't know beforehand, is this the system of the Performance Center, then NXT, or a bit of both, and then going to the main roster? Is that working better than just having a guy debut on the main show? Oh, I think we might have lost Matt for a little while
No, no,
there. Oh no, we've got guy.
it just cut out a little bit at the end of the question. So
All
yeah,
right, fair enough.
you were saying, is it working better? Like they have a system where NXT is like, it's kind of like the systems we have in schools, isn't it? Where you go to your sort of junior school, then you go to your senior school, that kind
Sure,
of thing.
yeah, like a tier system.
Does it work better? I don't know. It kind of reminds me of the Royal Rumble, doesn't it? When you have to sort of get in the Royal Rumble and you had to win it to sort of get your WrestleMania shot. That kind of like, it's almost like that kind of pressure for the wrestlers that go through it. It's kind of like scary for them, I guess, because you have to work your guts out in NXT just to have a shot at the big time. You know, because you can't even. They make it sound like you don't even get classified as a champion for holding the NXT title. They never even mention that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like when Sasha won the women's title, they classify that as her first title. They don't even mention the NXT ones. There's huge amounts of pressure for that. So I don't necessarily think it should be done that way because you're still working to an incredible standard just on NXT.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. They don't see that as an established title, so they don't credit you with any of that stuff. Like they for a little while they credited kind of Kevin Owens because he came up with a belt and he was doing the matches with John Cena with the strap on his shoulder as such. But by and large, that NXT title, once you're on the main roster fully, that's sort of old news now. I mean, they just do not mention that you had those wins. So if you're a tag team or anything else, similar, I guess, to kind of you look at Enzo and Cash, guys that didn't win the NXT tag team titles, but you look at their rise to the top in WWE, at least at the beginning, was very good. Just to spend time on say, as a good example here, Enzo and Cass, Matt, who when they debuted on the main show on Raw, they looked like they were doing incredible stuff. Do you feel like WWE's dropped them slightly, and this could be another sort of worry in the long run for these guys? Because the thing is, when we see these guys on NXT, there's more time for them. The focus is different. The way it's produced is different, and I fear sometimes when these guys come up to the main roster, it's very difficult to recapture that sort of environment that they're used to in NXT. And we see how WWE seem very keen on Big Cass, but not Enzo as much. Now I'm starting to think, well, they're not really giving them much time as they were at the beginning. Is this another, dropout from WWE? What's your sort of view on that? And maybe are we sort of reading too much into stuff sometimes as fans?
Yeah, I think sometimes we can read into it a little bit too much. It's like like you're saying, when they first came up, they were getting a huge push, and then even when they were getting this huge push, we were sort of questioning it. We were thinking, well, has this push come a little too soon? Are they focusing on Cass too much? We don't want it to be like elevated to the top too quickly, and then we was kind of critical about that. So at this point, I'm kind of liking the way they're going now because there is no rush. I mean, these guys are still young. They've got a long career ahead of themselves. Hopefully, I'm hoping they're just like playing it cool with them for now and just like letting them fly below the radar a little bit. Give some other people their shots. Because these guys aren't going to go anywhere. They're still going to be there. And then maybe like down the line, a few months later or something, they'll start boosting them up again. Hopefully, I think is it WrestleMania that's coming around sort of their neck of the woods this year or something, or am I getting that confused? Because that would be a good time for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think by and large the performance center, just going back, Matt, backtracking a little bit with the performance center, the idea of it, the reason it was constructed in the first place was obviously Triple H especially had identified some sort of flaw with the industry, And you know it is difficult